Oh, I'm supposed to be talking now. I totally forgot that that's my job today. Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Rudo is out sick as he has a tooth infection. I hope he's watching this and giggling along. We are presented by DraftKings as our presenting sponsor as I try and figure this out on the fly.
DraftKings Sportsbook.
Sportsbook? What's the difference?
DraftKings is different than DraftKings Sportsbook.
Okay, so that's great to know. Today I learned that there's a difference. DraftKings Sportsbook is our presenting sponsor. I'm AJ Hafley. He's Evan Rao. we are definitely going to do this. We are finishing up our week of expansion draft talk today by getting to the last division on the list, the Metropolitan. Evan, I'm sure you've been watching all the other shows in depth and really tearing apart all of our lists. Expansion, are you over it yet?
I've been over it for a year.
God, me too.
I'm happy it's almost done. I'm sure, like you. Let's just get this thing going. We find out Saturday?
Yep. We find out 1 week. Yeah. 1 week from tomorrow, the lists are due. The NHL will publish those lists. We will talk about them a couple days later, I'm sure. And then the day before the actual expansion draft, we will have our own mock. It will be a grand old time. And then everybody can grade the work that I put into this. Today we are starting. We're going back to alphabetical. We changed things up yesterday as we jumped all over the board as conversation took us places. Today we're starting with one of the most difficult teams to project, the Carolina Hurricanes. Evan, this one was legitimately really difficult for me. Leaving Dougie Hamilton exposed, knowing that he's a UFA and that they're willing to let him look around. The easy ones for me to protect were Nedeljkovic, Slavin, and Pesce. I added Jake Bean as the last defender. Exposing Brady Shea, Jake Gardner, Yanni Hakanpää, and Dougie Hamilton. Do you have any thoughts about this defense? And it's a stacked group, and only being able to protect three of them was really kind of a tough spot.
Yeah, the Hamilton situation changes everything. Obviously, at the start of Jake Gardner, I think we can assume, obviously, he was on waivers at one point this year. He's not getting protected. I think, obviously, the one guy who we would probably look at is Brady Shea. Mm-hmm. And if they're leaving him protected, it's because he's signed for, 3 more years?
He's got 3 more.
Over $5 million. And I'm not, I haven't followed it a bunch, but I don't know if he's really worth that personally, but it might be some that they would be willing to potentially lose in a draft like this. So I could see them keeping Bean because he's going to be cheap for a while. And cheap would be something that Seattle might target, and young. So, yeah, Hamilton's situation obviously just changes everything, really. And it certainly doesn't sound like it's promising that he's going to be coming back there.
Yeah, it's interesting that they've kind of just said, "Hey, go find a deal," and then come back and let us know. It seems like a bold way to approach such an important player, but under Tom Dundon, that's kind of how they've done their business. I mean, everybody in the world knew that Rod Brindamore wanted to be there and that he wanted to get his assistants paid, and that they wanted to run it back with everybody. And even that negotiation was a tough process. And I think that kind of tips Dundon's hand about what kind of owner he's going to be, where he draws a line and he says, look, we won't cross this line. In the case of Hamilton, they've got great defenders already. He certainly makes them better and helps them. But if they're going to lose him, then he's going to have to go out and find the kind of deal that he thinks that he's worth, that Carolina just isn't comfortable paying.
Yeah, Dundon is kind of, I don't know if he's like the new wave of ownership, but he definitely is going to do things his own way. And we've already seen that in his few years in Carolina. And yeah, maybe they're banking on Hamilton going out there and saying, hey, this is what I'm worth. And maybe he comes back and he just can't find that. And they're like, okay, well, what about this? So they are taking a risk, but that just seems like the Dundon way. They're like, he's just my way. This is how I'm going to do things.
Yeah, he operates in the space in which he is comfortable and does not move out of it. And at forward here, I felt like there were 6 pretty easy decisions. Aho, Stahl, Teravainen, Niederreiter, Trocheck, and Svechnikov were the ones that I thought were pretty easy. Leaving open Warren Foegele and Jesper Fast. I protected Morgan Geekie because I think that he is an up-and-coming young player that has a lot of potential and it could be really, really good. And that they don't necessarily want to lose a guy like Foegele or Fast or even a Martinook. Really any of these guys that have been left unprotected, and they're not looking forward to that. But you gotta leave somebody unprotected, right?
Yeah, and I had Carolina in our expansion draft prediction thing before the season started that we did on the Discord, and I remember I protected Geeky, and you were like, over Foegele, and that's kind of what it's going to come down to here too.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I protected Jesper Fast, and I can't remember who I might have left unprotected. I think I might have left Nino Niederreiter unprotected just because of his paycheck. But yeah, it's a team that they have a lot of depth, and they're going to lose a forward, and that's just the reality of the situation. It's kind of just like the Avs. Like there's just forwards that you can't protect them all. So they're going to leave a good player unprotected, and they'll see if one of those guys gets taken. And Geeky is still relatively young, and he's he's going to be cheap for a while. And I think it's like I said on defense with Bean, that's something that Carolina is going to value.
Yeah. In goal, I predict Nedeljkovic, who was kind of really he's been their top goalie prospect for a long time, and they just kept waiting for it. Finally, what seemed like after they put him on waivers and he goes unclaimed in the entire league, it finally clicks for him, right? So I have him protected. He played his way back into an RFA. He had to play X number of games to avoid being one of those specially designated AHL free agents who don't play enough NHL games. And so he's still an RFA. So Mrazek and Reimer unprotected. Looking at this list, I think the name that really jumps out is Brady Shea or one of those goaltenders, if you really want, who are both free agents.
Yeah, his finish, Nedeljkovic, his finish of the season just made it. It makes it a pretty easy decision for Carolina. But
yeah,
when we did that prediction show on a podcast here, Seattle's going to have their choice of a lot of defensemen.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be pricey, so they're going to have to make some decisions on which one of those guys they want. And Brady Shea he'd be a good pick for that franchise, but a decent cap hit there. They'd have to fit in amongst everything.
Yeah, 5.25 for 3 more years. It's acceptable, as long as he doesn't totally crater as a player. I think that they're fine. They would be fine supporting that. So I don't think that there would be any issues there.
Agreed.
All right.
And Eric Jelena. That's hilarious.
They did sign Eric Jelena, and that's kind of the thing with the bottom of those group, Yanni Hakanpää, Max Lajoie would be intriguing guys in other franchises, but in Carolina, it's no. There's just better players available, and that's assuming that they don't just take Dougie Hamilton and try and start their franchise with that guy, because they could do that, and it would be a hell of a way to get going. Because
they can start. When can they start talking to those guys? That's
good. The expansion. I think when the expansion lists come out.
Okay.
I think that they have I think they're allowed to start talking to them on the 19th.
Yeah, because they would know. They would know by the time they can pick.
Yep. All right, next one, Columbus. Honestly, I didn't think Columbus was going to be this easy going into it. Instead, there were 7 very obvious forwards to protect. They had 2 obvious exposure guys in Eric Robinson and Kevin Stenlund. The defense, even though they're looking to trade Seth Jones, you don't just give them away for free. So Jones, Werenski, and Vladislav Gavrikov, easy protect. Jonas Korpisalo in net. This one was really straightforward. And after I looked at it for a while, I came to the conclusion that if I'm Seattle, unless I'm really interested in Eric Robinson, especially, I'm probably just taking one of these UFAs and not signing him and just being done with it. I don't think there's a lot here.
Yeah, I know some Swedish people do like Stenlund a little bit, and he had a decent season for Columbus, but this is a pretty easy protected list, and they really are not going to have much to choose from in terms of quality. So I'm not sure it matters who they really take, but they're not going to. No game breakers are going to be picking here. They're not going to be picking between a potential top 4 defenseman like the last team.
Yeah, it feels like without Jones, or without like the drama surrounding Jones, there's just really not anything here. Grigorenko just signed a 3-year deal back in the KHL, so that's gone.
I was rooting for him. It just didn't work.
Yeah, I wasn't super surprised when it didn't work out under Torts, who kind of like Bednar does not really love it when guys kind of drift in and out of effort.
Mm-hmm. It was weird that he picked them in the first place of all the teams and coaches he could have gone to. Yeah,
I mean, that might have been his only opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there was some heat on him coming back across last year.
Yeah.
And so I would be surprised if Columbus was his only real offer, but he clearly was more comfortable going back to the KHL. He took a 3-year deal, so that's pretty much it for Grigo in the NHL.
Yep, he's going over to be a KHL star.
Good for him. I don't really have anything else on this list that I feel strongly about. Scott Harrington or Dean Kukin on defense, like I'm good. These aren't guys that they should take.
No.
If they feel strongly about Robinson or Stenlund, fine.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they felt strongly about those guys, though. The next one on our list here, I struggled with New Jersey, and I honestly almost went 4-4 with New Jersey because they're actually in kind of a bad spot right now. Right now they have to expose 2 of Nico Hischier, Andreas Janssen, Miles Wood, Jesper Bratt, Pavel Zacha, and Nathan Bastian. 2 of those guys have to be exposed because of they just don't have anybody signed at forward for next season. They don't have anybody signed at forward for next season. So those are the only guys that fit the exposure requirements. They have to expose 2 of them. So they in the next week they need to add some guys if they want to be able to change their protection list. Otherwise, right now I have Miles Wood exposed because he's one of the more overrated players in the NHL in my mind. People love him, but if you look at his underlying numbers, he gets the shit kicked out of him on a regular basis, and him being fast, it just isn't good enough. It's not meaningful enough that he's just really, really fast. I'm not a big Miles Wood fan, and at 25, in this group there isn't really a lot to expose. Bastian and Wood were the ones where I thought these will hurt them the least amount. The one guy on defense that I left exposed was Will Butcher. Although Siegenthaler did just sign an extension, and he's an interesting guy too. So there could be somebody for them on defense between Butcher and Siegenthaler, and I guess if they really liked one of these goaltenders as like a third guy, like Scott Wedgwood would be fine. Aaron Dell, like feeling strongly about any of these guys either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you
they look like a rebuilding team.
Well, how poorly run are you if you still have to sign people to not expose some of these other guys? Like,
yeah, well, and like maybe that's a sign that they're going to go 4-4.
Yeah,
that they will sign or they will protect like Heischer and Zaka, and I imagine Jesper Bratt, and then Andreas Janssen or Miles Wood, like whichever one they prefer. It should be Janssen, but I don't know.
Yeah, they gave up a decent bid for him, so they should protect him, you'd think.
Yeah, and if he was exposed, I would think he would make plenty of sense for the Kraken to target. As a team that's going to struggle to get decent forwards, he's fine.
Yeah. If this was the protection list, Siegenthaler, I think, would be the pick from Seattle. I think he's a decent youngish defenseman, and he's going to be cheap. So, but yeah, I know we had talked originally about Subban being unprotected. The idea of that.
And I did this last night before the Siegenthaler contract was finished. Mm-hmm. Now with that contract being done, I would probably keep him. I would protect him and expose Subban. There's only 1 year left on that deal. So the money is really, for Seattle, $9 million is kind of whatever. And that would be a fun first face of your franchise, knowing that his next contract is probably not even going to be half of what he's making right now, unless he has an insane bounce-back season.
Yeah. Yeah, from the marketing perspective, you're looking at, okay, yeah, this is someone we could... I mean, I don't really know how much a team like Seattle coming into the league like Vegas, they're probably going to sell out a lot, and they're going to be just fine. Do you really need, like, another player like that? But it would be fun to have him as the face of the franchise, even though he's clearly not anywhere near the player he was 4 or 5 years ago. So,
yeah,
it's another team that there's just not a lot. I'm not a big Miles Wood fan either. I don't think there's a lot to pick from this team either.
Yeah, it's really. I agree with you. If Siegenthaler's there, I'd like him. To a lesser extent, Butcher would be fine. Only 1 year left on his deal as well. That's a guy that could be a specialist for them if they wanted him to be. Could be easy to move if they wanted to turn him into a future asset sometime down the road. But
making almost $4 million. That is
yeah. He really, really got fat off of the first half of his rookie season.
Yeah.
And Subban, I think, Subban, understanding that PK Subban is not the player that he used to be, he would be a fine way to start a franchise too. I would have if Seattle did that, I don't think there's just not much here. Like,
it's such a boring team.
Yeah.
Such I don't know about boring, just uninteresting. Like I just don't like whenever they're on. It's like, nah, I don't really feel like watching them. No.
I think I really like some of the younger guys. Like, they've got the other Bulkfist, Jesper, obviously Jack Hughes, Nolan Foote, Ty Smith, Alexander Holtz, whoever they take this year. I like where they're headed.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not quite there yet.
And then Lindy Ruff as a coach, like what was that decision?
It's very like, let's turn back the clock and try and squeeze out an 8th seed in the postseason and crush Jack Hughes' soul.
Yeah.
So, all right, Evan, let's get to what will be the most entertaining part of the show as I try and work my way through the advertising part of this, which has changed quite a bit since the last time I tried to run a show. So, Allie
needs some help.
Allie here to be the parent.
Yeah, the adults ready to step in.
Yeah. But no, Go
I have
ahead.
to say, there was comments about TDSP and how I dropped an F-bomb, and that was because I was angry, and multiple people already cursed on that show anyways, so don't come at me on this podcast about dropping some bombs.
Expectations are higher for you than the rest of us. We are the peasants, and you're the actual adults. Sorry. I don't know how things got to be that way, but that's the world in which we live now, so...
Maybe it started with Rudo's Manscaped reads. Who knows?
If you...
Speaking of...
Yeah, if you wanted to prove what a great adult you are, you should definitely sign up for a DNVR membership. We have the most in-depth coverage for your professional Denver teams. And you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously doing something right. And there's a ton of perks to becoming a DNVR member. And honestly, the list of perks just keeps going up over time. The DNVR Golf League, I didn't get a chance to be a part of it, but I'm a little jealous every time I see everybody go out and they get to play golf together. And I'm like, all right, that looks nice and fun. You have the members only Discord where, if you're going to roll into Discord and you're going to be a dick, you're not going to be around very long in that Discord. But if you want to come in and you just want to talk about hockey, or there's 400 channels in that Discord now. You can find pretty much anything that you want to talk about with your fellow DNVR peeps. And I'm kind of always hanging around it. I interact with the Avs peeps pretty regularly to drop in and make sure that they're minding the P's and Q's. You also get raffle tickets at watch parties to win gear. You get to read our content, obviously, which there actually is some again today because I finally got off my ass and decided to write something. I wrote about Eric Johnson, so that was good. Thumbs up for me and for you as a member. You also get a DNVR shirt with the membership. I always think that's pretty cool. And then the big beer at the bar, the big beer versus little beer. That alone, right there, should be a good enough reason for a membership to DNVR. Every time somebody orders one of the small beers, a little piece of me dies inside. So, Evan, the Ball Corp. Is it the most evil sounding name ever?
Yeah, it sounds evil and dirty.
It's funny because they went with such an evil, dystopian sounding name, but they actually are doing great things. And leading the global sustainability effort is not a small thing. So we've been excited to partner up with them. They are looking to hire folks left and right. Lots of jobs that they're trying to give to people. Coming out of the pandemic, it is tough finding work for some people right now. And as I talked about previously, I have a friend who works there. I actually have a couple friends who work there, one of whom speaks very highly of it, and the other one I haven't asked, so I can't say. But the one of them is definitely very excited about their career at Ball, and said that they paid him a competitive wage for his skill set in the marketplace. And it's given some of the issues that we have in the economy, I think that's pretty awesome. I think that's one of the more encouraging things to hear, and certainly one of the reasons that I am excited that we partnered with them is because they actually take care of their people, and they try and set you up not just for a job but for a career. And I think that is, if you're not at a point in your life right now where you are set up for a career but you want to be, then get a job at Ball. You can do that a number of ways. You can apply for a position at their aluminum can plant. You can text GOLDEN to 77222 or go to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. All good ways to become part of the Ball family, which is an extended arm of the DNVR family. So all of those things are good. How was that? Did I survive that?
Yes.
I feel like I did.
Did it.
Great, because now I have to roll right into the DraftKings ad, which is all about McGregor versus Poirier 3. set for UFC 264 this weekend. I believe it's tomorrow night.
Yes, and we'll be playing it here at the bar, which will be no cover, so people can come down here, hang out. There is an RSVP list, though, so you've probably gotten it in your email if you're a member, or you can find it on all of our social media platforms, and you can come watch the fight. It's exciting.
And it is a game, in a way. The DraftKings Sportsbook is the official sports betting partner of UFC. And this weekend, they are offering 264-1 odds on a knockout in the first round during Saturday's main event. If this rubber match ends in a first-round knockout, you're walking away with cash. P.S. That is my DraftKings pick of the week.
What is
I am picking Poirier to knock out McGregor in round 1.
That's what Ryan and Andre chose. I'm going McGregor.
Sorry, I just can't with that dude.
I understand. My family, though, I heard through the rumblings that my little brothers were betting large, and so I'm scared for them. So I just am family support that McGregor wins and they don't lose a lot of money.
Well,
That's
if
where
you
I'm
are,
going.
if you are
They're
not
betting on
going,
DraftKings Sportsbook, of course, though. Like Andre and Ryan.
which is where you go to win a lot of money, because if you bet $1 on either one of those guys to win by a first round knockout, you win $264. They're trying to give you money. Just take it. The same thing is like Ball is trying to give you money by providing you with a career. In this case, it's DraftKings Sportsbook. Just take it.
I mean, I feel like a lot of our
money is dope.
A lot of our sponsors are this way. Breck is just trying to give you good beer. Hassel Cattle Company is just trying to feed you and have you eat good meat. And then Manscaped is making sure you're taken care of. And now we've got...
Manscaped is something.
And DraftKings is just trying to give you free money. So just take it.
And if you are interested in taking that money, you have to know that DraftKings Sportsbook is safe and secure. It's reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience, which is certainly nice. I don't like being time-gated with my own money. Make sure that you download the top-rated top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into 264 of those dollars when you bet on one of the main event fighters this weekend to win by first-round knockout. Place your bet and watch the fists fly this weekend. That's DNVR. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right. Let's get back to doing the thing that I do well, or at least I think, which is we're going to talk about hockey.
You did a good job.
While that also has to happen, I do have to prepare for the next ad break. So, Evan,
comes across as AJ reads. Like, AJ can read? Or
yeah, it's
AJ
great.
Reads?
I can actually read.
It's like, which way does that come across? I know they're probably not saying AJ can read.
It surprises me too. So, we are going to start with the Islanders.
Oh, you know this one, then.
The Islanders are in a spot. I don't think they're in a bad spot, but they're in a spot. I think the forwards were pretty straightforward. Barzal, Lee, Nelson, Eberle, Pajot, Bailey, and Beauvillier really stood out to me as the obvious ones. The only guy there that you might raise an eyebrow to being exposed is Kiefer Bellows, but that's just because he's a recent first-round pick, and he hasn't really done a whole lot in the NHL. It just hasn't really gone great for him so far. So I have him being left unprotected, and if that's the decision that the Islanders, or if the Kraken want to go in, that's totally okay. On defense, Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, and Scott Mayfield. This leaves, the big one here, it leaves open Nick Leddy. And Nick Leddy is a big part of what they do. That Pelech-Pulock pairing is not only great alliteration, but also kind of their top pairing at this point. But I really, Mayfield is signed for 2 more years at just $1.45 million. One of the more underrated contracts signed in the last couple of years, as he has developed into a legit, rock-solid defenseman. Nick Leddy, 1 more year at $5.5 million. I hate to leave. I like the player. I hate to leave him exposed, but they've got to. They've really. I think he would be a really tempting option for the Kraken.
Yeah, especially with only 1 year left, he can still skate. Obviously, skating is his big asset, and it's a good player to put in your top 4 pretty much from day one. But yeah, it's the Islanders lost Devon Toews last summer because they just couldn't afford everything, and
and that was before. That was before they knew that Johnny Boychuk was done for the rest of his career.
Yeah. So, they have to make a tough decision there, and they have a lot of forwards to protect. So going 4-4 it's not an option, really, is it?
I don't think it is. I do wonder if they could leave one of these other forwards, like a Jordan Eberle. He's really the one that stood out to me because a lot of these other guys, Barzell, Lee, Nelson, and Bailey and Beauvillier are all draft picks. They're all homegrown guys. And Pajot has been super important for them since he got there. So I do wonder if there is a temptation to leave Eberle exposed and protect the Kiefer Bellows and see if they take Eberle's money off of their books. $5.5 million for the next 3 years. He's already 31. I don't know if there are going to be many options for better offensive players than an Eberle if he were exposed. And that money could really help them out because they need a new deal for Sorokin. And that's probably not going to be super cheap.
Yeah, for Seattle, from their perspective, when we did the draft, it seemed like they had a lot of options on defense. Yeah. But then up front, skill-wise, there just wasn't a ton that's going to be available. So if a guy like Eberle was available, he wouldn't be the worst guy to bring in and have be a top 6 forward while you're kind of figuring things out as a franchise. So
the only downside of that is that it's 3 years at $5.5 million.
Yeah, and he's already 31, like you said. So he's getting up there a little bit. And with that term, God, that makes me feel old that he's already 31. I remember his draft. So,
yeah, you say that, but Cal Clutterbuck is also exposed here. And I drank beer with Cal Clutterbuck when he was a Houston Aero as a Minnesota Wild prospect. So I don't want to hear about old.
Yeah. Well, we're both old. Let's just say that.
True. We're both almost dead. It's almost over for us.
Yep. So, man, the Islanders have so much money locked up in forwards. So
they just kept re-signing their own guys, really.
Yeah, and it's just like all this mid-range dollar amount. So
yeah,
if you're them, is it the worst thing in the world to maybe get rid of one of those deals?
Do you pay? Do you pay Seattle in a guy like Kiefer Bellows to take Eberle to ensure that money you want to lose gets lost?
I don't know. I haven't followed Kiefer Bellows as much since he entered since he turned pro. So it's just more like, I don't know if he's really worth anything. Like using him as value, is he really that valuable? Like that's really the thing, I guess. So, I'm not sure that's too terribly tempting at this point. He's 23, so it's not like he's younger than still got chance here, but I'm not sure he's too enticing for Seattle, I guess, from that perspective. If that's the best they can get, then obviously they can do that, and he is one of the younger guys that they could potentially pick up as a value pick from some of these teams that are looking at a crunch here, but he doesn't scream too valuable to me.
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I don't really like any of these options. I did protect Varley at net. That's the obvious choice. Corey Schneider and Ken Appleby. What?
Corey Schneider. Totally forgot they signed him just for this, I think.
Well, he's unsigned, so he doesn't even really do anything for this. Exposing Varley, I think they would probably just take him. He has to have some value around the league. I think Varley would be a good trade candidate for them, honestly. Freeing up some money, switching over to Sorokin, and then just seeing what they can do with some of the money that they save and trading Varley away. But exposing him and losing him for nothing, I think would be bad business.
Yeah, Seattle getting Varley would be. I mean, I don't know if you can compare it on the level of getting Fleury in the expansion draft, but that's a hell of a goalie to get to start your franchise with, in my opinion, if it did happen.
I definitely agree. Some of the other guys, Kyle Palmieri, he's a UFA. He could be interesting. He's a bit of an analytics guy. The analytics say nice things about him up until this season, where everything for Palmieri kind of just didn't go very well, honestly. So I think he's, there's no interest in Andrew Ladd. Like Clutterbuck has a year, Komarov has a year. I guess if they really wanted to, they could do that. But the Islanders would be over the moon if they took one of those cats and that money off their books. Especially with them going to try to aggressively work to re-sign Casey Cizikas. So,
yeah, I feel like them taking $3.5 million off their cap with Cal Clutterbuck would just be a gift.
Yeah, it would hurt the Islanders a little bit because that's their vaunted identity line. I guess.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, it could be a lot worse. You'd take getting rid of $3.5 million for, their best fourth line in the NHL or whatever. Has to take a hit somewhere.
All right, have to take a hit somewhere. I think that's just reality with this expansion draft, is that if you're in a position like this where they have so much money tied up that you're just going to lose a guy. Although, just given where they are and given Lou's penchant for tinkering, it would not be surprising for them to do something stupid to try and save face, to try and whatever. I just don't at all trust Lou to just sit there and lose a guy. So it's just me. The Rangers. Hate talking about them. I don't like admitting that they exist. They're awful in every way. Pretty straightforward protection list, though, with it actually being a little difficult on defense, because I just didn't really know what to do. They had Gorgiev in goal, easy protection. Jacob Trouba, Ryan Lindgren, easy protections. The third guy on defense, pick one.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly. Tony DeAngelo, I thought, given how this year went for him and the way that he basically just got told to go home, and I'm kind of surprised we've made it all the way through the first day of the buyout window and it hasn't happened yet. That seemed like that was a thing that was probably going to take place, but maybe they're holding out hope that Seattle either takes him or they trade him for something. I don't really understand what DeAngelo is still doing on their roster, given they've made it very clear they want to be done with that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, their protection list is pretty straightforward. Colin Blackwell, maybe someone they would consider up front, but...
So Blackwell, they only have two forwards that fit the exposure requirements, and Blackwell and Kevin Rooney are the only other ones that fit.
Mm-hmm.
So if they wanted to protect Blackwell, they would have to expose one of Strome, Zibanejad, Kreider, or Panarin. So they need to, if they sign somebody, if they give a contract to a Julien Gauthier, a Brett Howden, one of these other guys, they could then do that. They could then actually protect Blackwell. But right now, he came at the expense of just the process, basically.
think Howden signed today. But yeah, they're losing a depth guy anyway. So Colin Blackwell's plus he's 28. So I mean,
right? He's 20. He's 28, and Brett Howden is 23, and Filipido's 21. Buchnevich and Strome, like those are all impact players. So those guys wouldn't make any sense. But like you just look at the age of those guys and you look at what they could do. You know, if they preferred to protect Gauthier over Howden, that could be fine. But for me, I think this should be Colin Blackwell.
Brett Howden was playing, rightfully or not, he was playing big minutes for them down the stretch for some reason, like more than obviously Capo and things like that. So it's like, yeah, I think they'll protect him. Plus he's cheap and young. So
I've been between writing and being on podcasts all day. I'm not surprised I missed Brett Howden getting a contract.
Yeah, it was just a 1-year thing. So yeah, it's another one where it's pretty straightforward.
I don't like any of their defensemen.
No, and Shesterkin's not eligible for the expansion draft, so it makes the goalie situation just very easy.
Yeah, like Morgan Barron, Lafreniere, Kravtsov, Capo Kakao, Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, Igor Shesterkin. None of these guys are eligible for this, so it's like they're really not. They're fine.
Yeah,
they are really not having to worry about what they like if they lose Colin Blackwell. Oh no, a guy that they didn't even play all the time. You know, it's fine. I think Gauthier would be an intriguing guy because they need somebody that's going to score goals, and that's like the one thing that he's got.
Yeah, and he's still pretty young, so certainly younger than a guy like Blackwell. So I think you'd take a chance maybe on him over Blackwell just because of age and hoping that he pans out a little bit more.
And if I'm the Rangers,
too.
He is, and if I'm the Rangers, I probably protect Gauthier over Howden because I am super underwhelmed by. I've always been underwhelmed by Brett Howden. Mm-hmm. I've always thought he was just an overrated prospect, and here we are.
He's getting protected potentially.
Well, and now that he's signed, you know, if they wanted to expose him and protect Gauthier, they could do that, and that would be fine. Good. I would take him if I'm Seattle. I would probably take him over Blackwell because you know he's 23 years old and just see. Seattle's gonna have to get lucky somewhere along the way at forward. They're gonna have to get a guy that is a depth guy who hasn't done very much, but when put into a bigger role is going to find a home somewhere. So. That you know, taking a chance on a Howden or a Gauthier will have to be kind of how they live.
Yeah, it's a little different than what it was a few years back.
Yeah, and then this is the part where Rudo would transition. He would make some off the wall, unbelievable connection between the conversation that we just had and shaving your balls. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to say shave your balls, dudes. And ladies, if you want your dudes to shave your balls, then shave their balls, then great. That's why we have Manscaped. Yeah. That's the whole point, right? Like that's the thing. The new lawnmower 4.0. That's the jam. That's where it's at. Everybody that I know honestly has one at this point. And that's not even an exaggeration. Not even lying.
You got a lawnmower 4.0 parties.
Not even lying about it. That's a thing that actually happens. I know a ton of people with the lawnmower 4.0.
The bar cheersing with them.
Yeah, that's right, man. I think Rudo even brought one time.
Oh,
so
come on.
I think that was probably the day he got it. Okay, so it was there, but that was the Manscaped read to a whole nother level. So that thing is it's the jam. It's incredibly effective. It's got a dope little light on it, which I have always thought was cool. And you know, it's nick free. That's the whole point, is that it's safe to shave your junk with. So neat. Oh, and it's waterproof. I always thought that was also cool. Manscaped also has a ton of other products that you can get a nice little discount off. If you use the code DNVR at manscaped.com, you get 20% off with free shipping. You can also set up like a subscription service. You can set up renewable orders so that if you're running out of something 3-6 months later, you can give it a rough estimate. 6 months, they just ship it to you. Bam. It's a pretty sweet little deal, actually. So 20% off free shipping with the code DNVR at manscaped.com. Escape the shrubs and weeds this summer and shine. And shine.
Rudo's watching this like all on his painkillers, like, no.
With Manscaped. So and then when you get done manscaping and when you get rid of the shrub and the weeds and you are shining, take that package and, preferably cover it up and then head to Illegal Pete's where you can get some delicious eats because Illegal Pete's is back. I am excited that we have him on board. I know Rudo is a pretty big fan. He's got like favorites on the menu and like go-tos and
I was just there last week. Yeah.
There you go, man. There you go.
It's the one place where you can get pesto on your burrito. And we need more pesto on burritos, in my opinion.
Very pro pesto, eh?
I am pro pesto. Pesto can go on anything, in my opinion.
They have a sound check promotion going on at all locations that offers a free draft beer or house marg with the purchase of an adult entree when the guest shows a same-day ticket to any event. They have a location right in Lodo, so you can easily head there before or after the Rockies lose another game in the last 2 innings, which is pretty common. Pete's has also launched the Party Margs, 32 ounces of their house margaritas, which is 4 times the size of a normal house marg. So it's basically a margarita bucket. And after a Rockies loss, you roll down to the Lodo location. What's wrong with that? A bucket of marg sounds great to me. They have happy hour at all locations from 3 to 6 p.m. every day. It's $1 off all drafts. It's $1 off the house and coin style margs, $20 party margs, and $1 off large chips and queso and chips and guac with free chips and salsa if you're drinking at the bar. Illegal Pete's. Go get your jams. Now I have to talk about the Colorado XOs. And do I have anything to really say about them other than it's one of the cooler concepts I've ever heard of a team just taking athletes from other sports and morphing them into rugby players. Kind of a cool thing. The grand experiment that they've got going on out at Infinity Park, which is a beautiful facility if you've never been, finished up their season at 5-5. It's a pretty good start for a team playing against actual professionals that have been going at it for a long time. And Infinity Park, the home of the XOs, it's considered Rugby Town, USA. So there's a bunch of other stuff in here that I am very clearly reading right now. The Rugby Town Sevens tournament, August 20 to 22nd, out at Infinity Park. It's a great family outing for fast-paced rugby, great adult beverages, and it's very affordable. This is actually pretty badass. Not that the other stuff hasn't been, but it's also movie nights. You can actually sign up at infinitypark@glendale.com/events to get updates on all the movie events, which is kicking off this weekend, next Monday, with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Gates open at 6 p.m. For my money, as a not Spider-Man fan, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the best that Spider-Man has ever been cinematically. It's an incredibly fun way to watch a movie outside on the field with family and friends. A great way to spend a beautiful Colorado summer night. You download and subscribe to the DNVR Rugby podcast to stay up to date on all things rugby with our guy Colton Strickler. Also follow him on Twitter for any of your other XO updates. Third and final period. I didn't really transition us into those ads. That's fine. Philadelphia. Another team that I just wasn't entirely sure what to do with. And I know Katie is probably going to watch this and judge me harshly. But the forwards, it started off pretty easy. Giroux, Voracek, Hayes, Konechny, Couturier. Easy, right? Cap Friendly wanted me to protect Lindblom instead of Scott Laughton. I chose Scott Laughton instead. And then I protected Nolan Patrick because I feel like that would be the easiest pick of the entire draft if that guy was left exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So he got protected. Defensively, I had a hard time here. Provorov, Sanheim, and Myers were my guys. I wasn't entirely sure. I didn't really follow the Flyers very much this year. I don't know how things went for them in this glut of dudes that they have. I know that it's been very up and down for Gostisbehere over the years, but I have him left exposed here, and Robert Haig as well.
Yeah, I think, Provorov and Sanheim are pretty easy picks on defense. And I think Myers is a good pick, too, to protect. I think these three are the picks to protect because Myers is young. He's a big guy, good defenseman. Gostisbehere, it's just been, like you said, it's just been wildly up and down. They had him playing forward at one point, too, I think.
Yeah, it's been a real mess for him.
Yeah, it just hasn't, after his rookie year where I remember when he was he came here his rookie year and the way he was walking the blue line, I was like, this guy's going to be insane. And it just has fallen apart. So I think on defense, I actually think those are three pretty easy picks. The only I don't think they're going to worry about Justin Braun. He's just an older guy that they signed. So
yeah, I'm not worried about Justin Braun.
And Robert Haig, I actually don't think is that good. So leave him unprotected. So really, it's just up front. They have a couple younger guys that they are going to leave exposed and could potentially be taken, and that's how they have to decide. So Laughton, that contract, he's signed for so long for a depth forward that it's just like, if you're a team like Philly, do you kind of want to get out of that contract and protect a guy like Lindblom? So
I don't think so because he's such an important glue guy to them. Like he's kind of their own Tyson Jost, where he just sort of ties a lot of it together. It's unspectacular. Mm-hmm. Like it's not super high level. He's not, he's not a high end guy, but he's a really important glue guy for them. And I think like Lindblom, he's got a great story. How effective is he? Is he really worth the $3 million for the next 2 years? But all of this is honestly irrelevant to me because James Van Riemsdyk is left unprotected. $7 million for the next 2 years. Seattle should just take that and run.
Yeah, and he's coming off a really, really good year. So, especially like we talked about, they're not going to have a lot of goal scorers. That's a guy that knows how to score goals, and he mostly does it right in front of the net too. So, if you're going to be getting we assume they're going to be getting some good defensemen. Getting a guy who's good in front of the net's going to be kind of key for them. So
yeah, that's actually a really good point. That with the defensemen that are expected to be available, I think that they're going to have a pretty an easy time getting pucks to the net and having a guy like that available to just play pigeon. I think that's a it's a high price to pay, $7 million, but it's only 2 years.
Yeah, they're going to have a good time getting it to the net, except if it's Graves. So everyone else should be good.
Just take that side swipe and run with it.
Yeah. But, if Seattle, like I said, they're just not going to have a lot of goal scoring. James Van Riemsdyk would be an easy pick for them. And also, it would hurt Philly, but also getting rid of $7 million off the cap wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So,
yeah. And they've got Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee and Tyson Forster, a lot of guys that are kind of pushing. Wisdom was really good down in the AHL last year. I don't know how far away from the NHL that makes him. Like Jean-Luc Foudy was really good in the AHL too, and he's not making the NHL next year. So, they've got some interesting younger guys too that I think could replace JVR. Maybe more in the aggregate than one for one, but I don't think that it should be like, I understand like protecting Lindblom at 24, $3 million for 2 years. It's not very much, but at some point you need guys that are gonna do things for you.
Mm-hmm.
You need some guys that are gonna be able to score some goals for you.
Yeah, it's from a fan perspective, looking at like a draft, you're like, oh, well, they should go more on the projection side and take this young guy who could maybe become more.
Yeah.
When the reality is they have to ice a team. Like they have to.
Right.
Like,
well, and you don't want to take 30 Oscar Lindbloms, who are good guy, good player, but you want to be competitive. You want to win some games. You don't want to just take depth guys and then just be like, okay, well, we're hoping here, and you end up with your high scorer scoring 31 points for you. And you're just like, wow, that did not work. That did not work at all. And so, when you have an opportunity to get a guy like JVR, I think that you should just take it. And look, is he going to win you a cup or anything? Probably not. But if he's still effective in the last year of that deal, again, retain half of his salary, and you can move him before he leaves in free agency if he's still any good. Maybe you just keep him, and you're just competitive. You're just a little more competitive. Even if he's not part of the long-term solution, he's the kind of talent that they're absolutely going to struggle to find on the whole. So I think that they should, I would take him and not worry about the rest of us.
Yeah. And Philly, like all these good teams, like we said, you're going to lose a good player. Like that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
If it's not JVR, I would honestly be more tempted to take Gostisbehere and see if he could turn it around than I would Lindblom. But that's just my personal feeling on it. Pittsburgh. Another one. This one, I kind of waffled a little bit on some of these choices. Coming down, they could always take Chris Bigras. That would be, it would be fun. He was
take Bigras and Graves and win the trade.
Look, Big Russ was always a really nice guy. What's gone on with his career has sucked. It has not been fun to watch. The Penguins and their protection list. Look, Malkin and Crosby, pretty easy to start off with. Gensel and Zucker, pretty easy there too. I had the last three as Russ, Tanev, and Kapanen. Now, Kapanen, I think with the age and the goal scoring, pretty easy again. Rust has turned himself into a pretty important player there. It was Brandon Tanev that I wasn't sure about. With guys like Sam Lafferty and Jared McCann, especially Jared McCann, available and signed for another year, protecting Tanev and 4 more years of his deal at $3.5 million for a guy that's 29 and is no more than a third liner. Zach Aston Reese is an analytics darling because he's very Val Nichushkin-like in that he is great defensively, but there isn't really much there offensively. So I'm not tempted by Zach Aston Reese at all. Teddy Blueger maybe, but still would be lower on my list.
Yeah. I think it's Jeff Carter is hilarious because it's like, well, we can expose him because we know he's not going to agree to go anywhere. Like, that's his whole thing. He's like, I'm retiring. If you take me, I'm retiring. So,
and we had
actually wants to take him.
We had the same conversation about Jason Spezza where it was like, he's like, nah. I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to take you anyway, dude.
Yeah.
Why don't you get over yourself, Big Chief?
Yeah, Tanev, he did have a good year there. It's just a matter of, like you said, the contract that's a big one there.
It's a lot for a guy with 29. His career high is 29 points.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 16 points in 32 games. Like he was fine for them, but Then you go and you look at his postseason performance. His postseason play hasn't been very good either. He's just like he's a fine glue guy, but at $3.5 million, he's overpaid, and at $3.5 million for the next 4 years, what is up with that, dude? No,
Who would you protect if not him? Then
I would consider. Let me pull up my list.
So McCann
yeah, it would be for me. It would start with McCann. And then after that, it would probably go Bluger and then Aston Reese.
Yeah, because this is, we haven't gotten to the defense. The defense is fairly easy, I think, as far as who they should expose.
Oh, yeah. I had protected...
Stinks. He's just not very good. So those three are pretty easy to pick. And then they love Tristan Jarry. Whether or not they should is another thing, but...
Do they still love him after that postseason performance? Are they still in love with Tristan Jarry?
I don't know. He bounced back after a rough start to the season, so I think they're going to stick with him. But yeah, it's another team that's going to lose a decent depth player, and that's the reality of the situation. But yeah, the Tanev situation will be interesting just because Pittsburgh's always up near the cap. Like if you can get rid of a $3.5 million, or doesn't mean that obviously he's going to get taken, but if you can expose that, and is that a risk you're willing to take? And from our perspective, it seems like it should be one they could take, but I'm not sure they will because they seem to love that guy.
Yeah, they only have $3.2 million in space though, and they still, they've got 7 defenders signed. They've got both goaltenders signed if they want. They only have 10 forwards signed though, so they've got to make a lot of decisions here. Guys like Teddy Bluger, Zach Aston Reese, they need to figure it out. Like Teddy Bluger had 22 points last year. Like he's been an okay little offensive spark plug for them as needed. So, that's if they protect him, then they have to turn around and sign him for something. Mm-hmm. If they lose Tanev, that they basically double their cap space by losing Tanev. And I don't know how much
worse it makes you.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it is for them to replace Tanev internally with one of those cats. I've never really thought Brandon Tanev was all that good.
Yeah.
And watching him make that and get that kind of a contract has always been like...
Pittsburgh has always been a team where it's like a forward will pop up out of nowhere and just be decent. Like Connor Sheary just came out of nowhere. Gensel kind of came out of nowhere. And then you got these guys like Bluger and Aston Reese. It's like they seem to be able to find depth players out of nothing.
They got 4 points in 8 games out of something named Radim Zahorna.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Which is totally made up. Like that is a witness protection name, sir.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like I don't understand how they do it. They do churn out decent depth guys that that struggle elsewhere. Mm-hmm. You look at Connor Sheary and going bouncing around for a bit now. Some of these guys that just haven't been as good once they left Pittsburgh, it makes me wonder why they pay for the depth guys. Like, why do you pay for a Brandon Tanev when you produce that guy? Like Rust has turned into a guy. He's got, he was a point per game 2 years ago, and he's got back-to-back 20-goal seasons. Like, he's rock solid. Jason Zucker that's a good hockey player, but he hasn't been. He was not what they needed him to be last year, I don't think.
Yeah.
And at $5.5 million, it's like, okay, do you try something?
Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, I think this all centers around Tanev and whether or not they expose him.
Pittsburgh's like the opposite of the Avs, where they find these weird random depth forwards in their system, and then the Avs can't develop a depth forward. So it makes sense when they're like, okay, we're going to go out and sign Belmar or Calvert and these guys.
For real.
So, yeah, I think, like we said, even if Tandeville was exposed, I'm not even convinced Seattle would take him because they'd still have a guy like a McCann or a Bluger or Aston Reese still available to pick that they may lean more towards, especially since they seem to be going in a little bit on analytics.
Yeah, I'm curious how they feel about McCann because he had a very percentage-driven breakout season. 32 points in 43 games. Just 3 points off his career high, but in 20 fewer games played. I would be curious to see kind of what becomes of Jared McCann and his, exposed or protected, because you can make a good argument for protecting him after the year he just had. But how much of it was real, which is if he's exposed to Seattle, take the bait and bite on it. And, what does he do in Seattle then out of the weird environment that is Pittsburgh's ability to just produce forwards out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Our last one. I can't believe I've worked my way through the entire league this week. I'm so sick of talking about this. The Washington Capitals. I feel like I'm missing something here. Because I thought this was going to be harder. I had previously looked at this and wondered and thought, oh man, they have a problem with protecting TJ Oshie. I didn't have any issues protecting TJ Oshie. The forwards were all very straightforward. Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Oshie, Mantha, Wilson, and Eller. There really aren't any young guys there that jump out at you and say, hey, you should be protecting this guy instead. The notable guys that are left unprotected are Garnett Hathaway and Carl Hagelin, unless you think, and Connor Sheary, Nick Dowd, if you think he's notable. I guess you could also go that route. But otherwise, those are all depth guys. Those are all role players at this point. Mm-hmm. Defensively, John Carlson, Dmitry Orlov, and Justin Schultz. Justin Schultz was the one where Justin Schultz could be Nick Jensen, McCall Kempney, Brendan Dillon, Trevor Van Riemsdyk. It could be any of those guys, and it wouldn't drastically change anything for me. And now that I'm looking at this, I'm regretting protecting Justin Schultz.
Who'd you swap him with?
Probably Jensen, because I like Jensen. But Kempney is also fine.
Yeah, Kempney's going to be a tough one because he missed the whole year, I want to say. So you're protecting him, and just, Seattle might not even have any interest in a guy who hasn't played hockey in a year and a half. So
it's true.
And Brendan Dillon, I am notably not a Brendan Dillon fan.
I would not protect Brendan Dillon though, just because of the money and the term involved on his contract, where it's just like you try and get them to take that. I did protect Samsonov in net, leaving Vitek Vanacek open, which maybe that's a thing depending on how real you think Vanacek's run this year was.
Yeah, I think Seattle's going to have a choice here because I think they could get a decent depth defenseman here.
Yeah.
Or they could take a chance on Vanacek, who being real. Now that I look at it, this is because I don't think there's any need for any of these depth forwards because they're going to have a million depth forwards to choose from.
The Garnett Hathaways and Carl Hagelins of the world is exactly the kind of forward that they're going to be able to get from 25 teams.
And the Daniel Sprongs, hoping that he somehow becomes something again.
Man.
I do wonder if they do take Vanacek here because he's coming off a good year, and you just never know with goalies. You just take a chance there.
So the two goalies that I've really kind of earmarked for as the ones that I am most interested in from Seattle's perspective are Brossoit and Jake Allen. And Vanacek would really kind of crash that party. But at 25 years old, if you get your starter here and he ends up being for real, you just have a starting goaltender now for the next 5 to 8 years.
Yeah, and he's making nothing next year. So, yeah, it's we talked about it. When I did a podcast with Rudo, it was like, well, is Samsonov a guy the Avs should target if this Grubauer situation goes south? Because he had such a weird year, and
yeah, he did.
We all would just assume that Washington would protect him because he is supposed to be the guy that takes over for everything. But man, did he have a weird year with COVID and injuries, and yeah, I don't even know what to make of that situation. And Vanacek really did save their season. Like, he legit started, I think, 20 games in a row at one point? Like, they would have been nothing without him.
Well, it's in Samsonov's numbers, even when he played. Like, they just weren't any good in the AHL. They weren't any good in the NHL.
So you're banking on him fulfilling this potential of the guy that you drafted in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's be real here. Like, Vanacek's numbers weren't very good either. Like, they weren't awesome, but 37 games played, a 269 goals against average, and a 908 save percentage behind a pretty good team. So you're just like, okay, like if he was on the Anaheim Ducks, you'd be looking at that like, that might be more interesting. I should dig into this a little more. But behind a good team, below league average goaltending, okay.
Yeah.
And then gets hurt in the postseason after he'd been lit up so far.
Yeah.
So a kind of a weird finish for him too. He finishes on such a down note that it was almost like the injury and the poor play at the very end almost just was like, okay, well, now we have the excuse we needed to protect Samsonov.
Yeah. Yeah, if from Seattle's perspective, it's another group of defensemen where it's like, well, we're going to have a lot of defensemen to choose from. Do we take a chance on this goalie here? But yeah, Washington turned out to be a little bit easier than we all expected. I think the talk was always, is TJ Oshie going to be exposed?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem like they have to do that.
Yeah, and I remember doing this a year ago because we did a mock. Our goal was to do a mock a year ago before the off season, and then after the off season, and then right before the actual draft, just to kind of see how it developed. And protecting TJ Oshie was really difficult in the last one that I did, and so I was expecting that coming in. That's why he's the picture of the thumbnail for the show, and then I had no issues whatsoever protecting him. I was like, oh, all right, well, that was easy.
Yeah, I think maybe a part of that is just he's from the Seattle area, so it's like, oh, that's the dream.
Well, and the contract that he's on is actually kind of insane.
Yeah. He signed until he's, 38, 39, something like that, so, yeah.
Yeah, 4 more years at $5.75 million. Now, the production hasn't fallen off yet, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But, we see this every year in the league. One more guy deep into his 30s hits that wall and becomes an albatross of a contract. So if Washington, really wanted to, they could expose Oshie and just kind of put the hands up and be like, all right, that's fine. Take him, let him be your first captain or whatever, and we'll manage. Because 34 years old, they don't really have the cap space. They don't have the flexibility. They are locked in at forward. All but 2 of their forwards are signed multiple years. They are locked in at forward for the next 2 seasons, pretty much. And if Oshie becomes an albatross of a contract at any point, I think they could really seriously regret not exposing him.
Yeah, Washington's on the brink of hitting that tipping point, you think, where those guys are getting old. Like, they're just getting older up front.
Yeah, I mean, Backstrom's 33, Ovechkin's 35, Oshie's 34, Lars Eller, even. That guy's 32 years old. John Carlson's 31. Orlov is 29. Schultz.
who they probably are even getting rid of. potential.
Then Kuznetsov is a totally different conversation because that's not a guy that they would expose, I don't think. Because if you're Seattle, you're just like, okay, thanks for the number one center.
Yeah.
And they end up with a better center on day one than Vegas has ever had. And, that's free. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of Kuznetsov talk around the league this offseason, especially when a team can't make an Eichel deal. I think the next thing to do, especially for Vegas, given McPhee's history, is to look at Kuznetsov.
Kuznetsov in Vegas, huh? That'll be fun.
Yeah, man. If you couldn't handle his business in Washington, what's the difference?
Yeah. But yeah, that was a lot more easy than we thought. Maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, and then a week from now, all these lists will come out, and I'll look like an idiot.
Yeah. Happens every year. We're always looking. Yeah, that's what happens when you make predictions and put your opinions out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making these lists all week and getting feedback from people who are like, "This would not happen," and I'm like, "Okay, like it's hard to do. 30 teams trying to figure out all the intricacies of all 30. It's complicated, man."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad this is done. I'm looking forward to the actual lists coming out and us actually being able to talk about, all right, let's draft a team now from the available lists. And then when some deals start to come out and actually happen, that will also be cool.
Oh yeah.
So any thoughts on the end of this process for us? I know you've only been on the show just the once this week, but we've gone through all 30 teams.
No real thoughts on, I'm with you. I'm ready for this to be over.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. It's cool, and this might be the last time that we see expansion for who knows how long. It could be a long time till we see it again. Right now, 32 is the most teams any league has. And of the big ones in North America, the NFL and hockey somehow are the 32. So, yeah, if Graves is exposed, the Avs would be fine letting that happen, I think.
Yeah. Yep. I'm over expansion talk. So if it doesn't happen for a few years or ever again, then I'm good.
Yeah. If the next time it happens, if we're not working in media, that'd be fine. I could just watch it then.
Yep.
So.
Fun.
All right, let's get out of here for the day. I forgot I'm in charge of that now. I don't think I have any other.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, hit that like and subscribe.
Yes, miss. Do that.
And this podcast is, of course, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Again. There you go. Got to just mention it a few times. Okay, are we done? Do I end it?
Well, we're done.
Would you like to say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, you're very echoey. So that's why I stopped talking. Bye. See you next week.